Oh, we're recording. Good evening, everybody. We're meeting with John Seed, and John is a journalist and art critic somewhere where the sun hasn't set yet. Damn it. John is in Southern California. Where were you raised? Were you raised in California? You're not a native, are you? There aren't any of those.
Well, I know I'm a seventh-generation Californian.
No shit, really?
Rush. No, absolutely.
From the 1840s?
Yeah, in fact, I know where he's buried over in San Bernardino. My grandfather followed a lot of genealogy, but yeah, longtime Californian.
That is so cool.
It awesome. Is cool. Yeah.
Do you have children?
I do. I have 3 daughters, and 2 are downstairs, and 1 will come in the door from basketball practice in about an hour. You'll hear her slam at the end of the webinar.
Being a native Californian is kind of like being, or seventh generation, is kind of like being a nerd.
Well, it's not like being a real native, because that meant being, you know, a Native American, but it's being a European early Californian. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, totally. That's fascinating. All right. So where did you grow up? Were you in Southern California as a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in the Westside of LA, Santa Monica, Brentwood. And, you know, I don't tell people I grew up there unless I get to know them a little bit, because that area has changed so much.
That's
it
right.
Really was a Leave It to Beaver, kind of a middle-class community. It's not what it was now, what it is now, kind of a Bel Air. But it was a really nice place to grow up. We were near UCLA. My math teacher in high school was Arnold Schoenberg's son. You know,
when did art come into the equation?
Well, always as a kid, model airplanes and puppets and drawing. But art really came into it in college when I was looking for an easy class. Fair enough. I wanted something that just, you know, was going to be relaxing, wouldn't be challenging. And I took art, and that was it. You know, the topic chose me. I didn't have to choose it after that.
It proved to be easy.
Well, not easy, but you know how when you find the right thing, it's not work anymore.
Where was this?
This was at Stanford.
Fair enough.
And, you know, and I went to Stanford to be what my parents wanted me to be, a lawyer, an MBA, a doctor.
When did you graduate from there?
I graduated in 79.
Interesting. All right. So I had a gallery in Los Altos in 79. And so who was Nathan Oliveira was there in 79?
He was my mentor. Yeah, he made all the difference for me. Yeah,
brilliant man. John Merriman. Did you know John?
I did. I took his art in the law class.
John was a fabulous client and a brilliant. John was about art and law. Oh, who am I blanking on?
I want to show you something, Paul. I don't see if I can turn this around without I'm going to take my cords off. But as I speak with you, there is a Nathan Oliveira Tauromachia monoprint over my desk.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, that is my trophy.
Yeah, I hope to get out there in the next couple of months, because, you know, Hunk and Moo. The Hunk and Moo are named for you guys, are fabulous collectors, Harry and Mary Anderson, who donated a small 100 paintings to Stanford University. And the paintings are fucking gangbusters, pardon my French, but their art transcends.
You're going to think I'm making this up, but I was there yesterday at their collection.
I know, the thing just opened October 20th. I wanted to have been there.
Yeah, and my latest essay I wrote for their book, which is called A Family Affair. I wrote about Nate Oliveira, and they have the book up there at the counter when you visit the Anderson.
So fabulous. Yeah. Yeah, my youngest kid's junior. So you
I'm done showing off now, by the way. That was my big show off. Now we can really talk turkey.
Okay, let's go back to Humble. Right. What did you make?
Yeah. Anyways,
I was asking, what did you major in?
Well, I majored in art, but I want to back up a little bit. I really wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be an artist. I wouldn't be anything I am if it weren't for Nathan, because I took his monotype class. And for those of you that have done monotype,
you took it as a non-artist.
Very, very flexible. Pardon?
You took it as a non-artist.
Well, I just went in there as a kid. I wasn't even a non-artist. I just was, you know, I wandered into his class.
Right. Okay.
And it was like wandering into the future. You know, it was like the doors opened. And with Nathan, I admired him immediately as an artist, but I admired him even more as a man. And it sounds almost like stalking, but I wanted to hear him talk. I wanted to watch how he grew. You know, I wanted to see everything he was doing, because there was a way of thinking about him that was incredibly strong. And I'd been raised by an engineer. You know, my father is a rational, you do it this way, there's a correct way. And then to meet somebody who's this different kind of thinking, it's like, no, it's all about possibility. And it's very, very broad. And you take yourself through it and you connect to something very, very ancient. That blew my mind. And that was who I wanted to be. I found a role model in Nathan.
it's absolutely fascinating how quickly we got to this truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant man, brilliant artist.
One of the finest men I've ever met, really, short of my father, an amazing man.
That's fabulous. Okay, we're done.
Yeah. There's more to talk about.
Yeah, there is. All right, so what happened after that? What happened?
Well, you know,
what was your degree in?
I became a painter.
People are asking about Nathan Hu, Oliveira, which is spelled Olive Ira, Olivira.
It's Portuguese for, olive farmer. And his father, can I go off track a little bit? Can I say something about Nathan? Yeah, okay. His father was a Portuguese immigrant, and his birth father, his genetic father, died when he was about 1. He drowned in the Russian River. And then Nathan's mother remarried, and George Oliveira was his stepfather. But he really grew up, it was an immigrant experience. He grew up in Haight-Ashbury before it was Haight-Ashbury. Grew up kind of in the poor part of San Francisco, and was artistic and musical, and was one of that generation of GIs who, after the war, really was right there when the Bay Area was very, very exciting with Clifford Still and Mark Rothko and David Park. All the great teachers were in the Bay Area. And Nathan even took a summer class with Max Beckmann when Beckmann was in the United States. But that's something about Nathan. That's kind of his lineage, his background. But what happened to me is that I majored in painting, and I'd had the fights with my parents. Why are you doing this? You'll never make a living. This isn't practical. But they acquiesced. My father kind of believed that what I was doing was a big mistake, but he felt that young men should be able to make big mistakes, which I respect. That was
good.
That was great.
I like him. Okay.
Yeah. And so I took my graduate degree, and I remember at graduation, most of my friends were getting married, or they'd gotten cars, or they were, walking into jobs or graduate school. And I became the night manager at an ampm, on the coast, and started painting.
Yep.
And so anyways, about 2 years later, I did graduate school at Berkeley. I really wanted to be around Bay Area painting, so I studied with Elmer Bischoff, Joan Brown, Robert Hartman. So I really got myself, a big taste of what Bay Area painting was about.
That's cool. Tell me all right, so what year was Berkeley?
So Berkeley be 81 and 82.
All right, that's when I moved to Chicago. I'm trying to think. So Roy DeForest was up the road. And I'm thinking many more people are Davis, too.
Davis was great. I took one seminar there. Arneson was there.
Yeah, right.
And Tebow was there. Tebow taught undergraduates, though. And Davis was a powerhouse. Davis was amazing.
And where was Volkus?
Volkus was at Berkeley.
Right.
Except he was on leave my first term because he'd been throwing pots in the nude with a bottle of whiskey, and they put him on sabbatical.
Yeah, well, that was before he got busted by helicopters for growing pot on them.
Probably before that, yeah.
Well, the art world's a kind of open and wonderful and warm place. All right, so continue. Bring me up to the present day in 2 minutes.
To the present day in 2 minutes. Well, I had done a stupid thing. I'd become an artist. And I went to L.A., it was a failure to launch, moving in with my parents.
Yep.
And to respond to the question, no, Joan Brown was married to Manuel Neri, was her first husband, so not Nate Oliveira. But anyways, I got to L.A., coincidentally, at a very exciting time, and I worked for Larry Gagosian when he was a brand new dealer, and I was a studio assistant for Jean-Michel Basquiat. And let's just say I've written about that. But I had contact with all of the New York people that Gagosian was bringing to L.A., Richard Serra, Robert Mapplethorpe, David Sally, Eric Fischel, all these people were around. And then after surviving 6 months at Gagosian, I went to MOCA when MOCA was new, because MOCA was opening up for the '84 Olympics. So what this gave me, and this will connect to writing, Paul, I'm actually going to make the connection.
You don't have to, but that's good.
Memories. I really had exposure to all kinds of interesting people and artists for a very concentrated period of time. And also I interned for the Andersons when I was at Stanford, so I knew them well and I knew their collection.
So do you know people like Neil Ben-Ezra? Was Neil around when you were at Stanford and Anderson?
He was a later intern for the Andersons.
You just look young.
I'm 57. But when you're in a creative field, you stay young.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally.
Believe that. That works for your 58.
Yeah. You want to fast forward to now?
The temporary, not quite, the temporary contemporary was one of the most exciting museums I've ever seen.
It was amazing. And the first show, I remember they had a Boeing 747 with paintings by Anselm Kiefer, in the nose. They opened up the nose and the paintings were tilted. They came from Saatchi. And Richard Kashalik came in there and pointed to a 30-foot wall and said, guys, I don't like that. Move that 20 feet. I was on the crew. It was crazy exciting. Yeah. But we called it the Museum of Coffee Achievers because, Kashalik used to brag. He said, we're doing shows with 35 people that the Whitney needs 120 to do, and we'd be exhausted.
Except for the 35 people, that's something to brag about.
Yeah, he was bragging about it.
Yeah. All right, so bring me up to the present.
All right, so I painted and exhibited. I had a one-man show in '84, and there was a period where things changed very, very quickly. And I think what changed quickly was in, 84, 85, 86, is that as an emerging artist, a guy trying to sell paintings, working with the dealers, I didn't have maturity. I wasn't mature as a painter. I wasn't mature as a person. I had unreal expectations. And I started in different ways kind of hitting the wall, or I had conflicts with my dealer. I was very unrealistic. And it all kind of changed for me at a lunch with an art collector. An art collector took me out to lunch, and there were 6 people around the table, 6 young artists, because he was kind of a people collector as well as an art collector. And he came around to me and gave me a talk. He said, John, you need to dress differently. You need to change your paintings. You need to meet my rich friends. I have all these recipes for the things you need to do. And I left lunch and I said, that guy's completely right. He's absolutely right that I need to do all those things, but I don't want to. That's not me. I don't need to remodel. And I went and applied for a teaching job. And within 6 months, I got the job that I hold now. I have been a community college art professor for 28 and a half years now.
Where are you?
I am at Mount San Jacinto College, which is 2 hours out of LA. We are north of San Diego and maybe half an hour from Riverside, if you know.
Where do you live in relationship to LA and school?
Oh, LA, if there's no accidents on the freeway, I'm in LA in about an hour and 40 minutes. But there's never a trip to LA without accidents or traffic jams. So it's 3 hours to get to the Getty and see some art.
So you have a lot of meditative time.
Well, I have a lot of time with, good things.
Either that with road rage, which is sort of like the opposite.
But Paul, this is what leads to writing. Because 5 years ago, my wife always heard me complain, I don't know enough people interested in art. I'm socially isolated. Sure. I'm not connected. Heard all this complaining.
Are you still married?
Pardon?
Are you still married?
Pardon?
Are you still married?
The second marriage. Yeah, we have a great marriage.
Okay, so, all right, so how did you solve this?
Well, I decided to be an art critic for the local paper.
So how long have you been doing this?
Well, it didn't work. I wrote them a review, and they dumbed it down and turned it into bullet points and said, here's your $50. And I said, take my name off it.
Yeah.
Because newspapers were failing. And Peter Frank, I was somebody I knew on Facebook. He said, contact the Huffington Post. They're starting an art section. And 4.5 years later, I've published about 230 blogs for the Huffington Post. And it's been an absolute life changer and career changer. And that's really at the heart of my story, is turning to writing was a complete change in, not a total change, but a strong change in my identity, and just a change in what I'm doing. Complete turnaround.
That's really interesting. That's really, really interesting, because I also write for Huffington Post, and I also get published by Huffington Post, and I haven't used it as aggressively anywhere near as you have, and I've done it really passively. And I've been happy with having it give me credentials and using those credentials for other things that I'm more interested in doing than writing. But let's talk about what it's done for you. All right.
Well, I started early. There were only, I don't know, a dozen bloggers back then. I'm sure there's a couple hundred now.
I'm sure I started the same time you did. I think I probably started in 2004, or the first hour it came out. Anyway.
But I was just very, very motivated. And, I began blogging. I have a specialty because of coming from the Bay Area, very interested in representational art.
Okay.
And so people began to say, John, you're writing about a lot of artists that normally wouldn't be written about. It was a little bit against the trend. And I think that made me stand out, and it got me people who began to follow me.
So how many people are paying attention to what you have to say, do you think?
I don't know, because they don't give us page counts on the HuffPost.
But you also write in other venues, do you not?
For about 6 months, I've been in Hyperallergic, and I've been doing a lot of journalism, just other journalism and catalog work. I've got a major article coming out in Arts in Asia in January about the last painter to paint the Empress of China. I have a catalog coming out for a Bay Area show that I can't say what it is because it's still in the planning stages.
So you are painting?
Just during sabbatical. No, I paint very little.
But you have a show on the horizon?
No, these are all writing things. All writing things.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Written projects, yeah. And I just
Come on. Now, what was the motivation to write for Huffington Post? How has the motivation changed as you've done it over 5 or 6 years? What is the motivation to write for Huffington Post?
One word. Yeah, social.
What?
Social. Because I wouldn't have met you if I hadn't written for the Huffington Post and many other people. It's social. I live in a small town. Pardon?
Could have just picked up the phone and called me. Okay, so all right, and because it's not money, we do not get paid by Huffington Post. What we get is something tangential.
People ask me what I get paid for writing, and I tell them there's a range. It ranges from free to $1 a word and everything in between, and that's true. It depends who you write for, and but the way the Huffington Post works, as you know, it's your platform. It puts you out there, and people read you, and you meet people, and then whatever it leads to, it leads to. Hey, Alan Gorman. Just saying hi to Alan down there.
Yep, I asked Alan to join us. Okay, so see, this is how it was Alan that recommended John to me. Alan took the course a year ago, I think. All right, so you then, you've noticed that sometime in the last 12, 18 months, the submittal process for Huffington Post changes so that they don't read what you write anymore, they just publish it.
That's right. Yeah, they're just concerned about, is it actionable, or are you insane?
That's right.
Or is the grammar really, really terrible? They'll pull you in those instances, but it's very, very free.
Have you been edited or sent? I felt like I was censored. Have you been edited?
A couple of times, but very, very minor edits. I've never had anything, turned away or anything like that. But I think the message I'd want to give to artists that are considering writing is that I've really come to understand how different blogging is from any other form of writing. Because blogging, it's the opposite of my first experience with the newspaper. You're not given a topic. You don't have an editor say, please write about this show or about this artist. And you also aren't worrying about advertisers. Because if you write for an art magazine, you know that the galleries are paying for the magazine. And if you give a really tough review, you're going to hear about it. If you write for the Huffington Post, the ads are for movies and get better looking abs and diets and things like that. Nobody cares what you say about art. So it's very, very liberating. And it's 300 words, it's 2,000 words, it's the mood you're in when you write the blog. It's very, very powerful to have that kind of freedom as a writer.
Part of what I like about it is that I put my email address on there and people say things.
Well, people say all kinds of things. I've certainly had my trolls. I've had people say nice things, but you're out there. It can be very vulnerable sometimes.
How do you decide what to write about?
I wake up in the morning and have coffee.
This is like work, though.
Pardon?
This is work or a hobby? This is work you don't get paid for? This is an avocation? This is a hobby? How do you and the government reconcile this?
I mean, I'll make it a little bit heavier. One more thing I'd left out of this. 12 years ago, I had cancer, and I had a very serious medical situation. I had testicular cancer with a large tumor that was inoperable, and I took chemo. A very heavy period of life. But the point is, I came out of it. And as I was recovering from chemo, I certainly didn't want to paint. I wasn't feeling very good. And I started doing some writing, and that was the first time people said to me, John, you got a lot of good stories. You knew Jean-Michel Basquiat, or you worked for Larry Gagosian in the early days, and you knew these people at MOCA. And so I think the combination of realizing that I had some things I wanted to write about, but also no better motivator than fear of mortality. Having an experience like that, it was very good for me. It matured me a lot.
No, definitely.
Yeah. And so, you write for the same reason that anybody paints or composes or whatever you do that's creative.
But is there a trend or a thread that runs through what you write? What I'm really curious about, my follow-up question is what makes me curious, and has that changed over time? As you've grown, changed, matured as a writer, observer, has your focus changed? That's the question I want an answer to.
Only slightly. I think I like the same type of things, but I've been educating myself. And I just know quite a bit more now, just because every time you write a blog, every time a blog is written, it's a thought process. I have to think about the art. I have to make my own decisions. I meet more people. I have a richer range of the art that I've experienced. So I'm better educated than I was. But the essential personality of my writing, you'd have to ask Alan, but I don't think the personality of my writing has not changed. That was there.
How much, when you begin an article, do you know how it's going to conclude? Or do you know how, so it's like an artist who begins a painting and makes a mark and then says, I respond to this mark by this other mark, and then all of a sudden something evolves and we have a storyline.
That's exactly right, because I was built as a painter. I painted very, very seriously for at least 10 years and kept painting another 10 or 15 more on the side. And so that process of you put a mark down on the canvas and then what do you do next? That's how I write. And a lot of I call them the clarifiers, the really important things that get said in the blogs come from jogging, because I run every morning. And usually in that last part of the jog where I'm kind of exhausted and pushing myself and, trying to get home the last 3 blocks, I'll write a sentence in my mind. And then I run upstairs and I sit down and I write that sentence from jogging. But that's where the conclusions come, as a form of meditation.
Yeah, no, exactly. Okay. That's fascinating. All right. What's next? My book is coming out in February. I'm excited about my book. And I got to tell you, doing a book is a really, really, having a publisher say, yes, we want it.
Right.
Is really gratifying. And, validating and a pat on the back. I highly recommend it. Have you done it?
Yeah, well, only on a small scale. I mean, I have a self-published book. It's called, I was ready for you, 10 Rather Eccentric Essays on Art. And, I've sold maybe 100 copies. But that really comes from my blogs. I haven't sat down and really written a book that is not available on the internet. I've been so defined by being a blogger that I kind of don't know how to sit down and say, John, you need to carry a topic through an entire book.
I didn't choose to do that either, though. I mean, my book is, based on all the different webinars. I had them transcribed, and then I took excerpts out of those, and then I wove a narrative.
Well, you're very smart. You're smart to do that.
I told a story, and maybe you could just, there's something there that leaves a more permanent mark and makes a deeper mark than a blog. A blog is fabulous, but something about the book in print is just, I think it's great that you've done that. I think the key is, though, that I'd like someone to ask me to write a book. Something I'm sure all the artists listening can relate to. Yeah, and you also wanted them to ask you for a one-person show, didn't you? Pardon? And you also were waiting for them to ask you for the one-person exhibit. Wait, hello, Alan, are you home? We'd like to give you a one-person show. Yeah. Well, it's always better if someone asks, but that's my ideal. Somebody, I'd like to get to the point someone will say, John, we'd like you to write a book. And I think that'll happen. Okay. I'd start writing. Are you writing solely about contemporary art? If I kind of had to break it down, there's a couple different things I write. I write opinion pieces, and opinion pieces are, it's a rant. You've got something that's on your mind, and you just have to say it. But I write kind of diplomatic rants, because I'm the type of person that I can tell you your family died in a car crash and make you feel good about it. But I write opinion pieces. I write profiles, although I haven't done it for a while. And then something that's easier, if I can't see a show, which is often, I write interviews. And the interview is really mainly a matter of asking the right questions and giving an introduction, and you kind of let the artists say it in their own words. And I've been doing a lot of that lately. I also written satire. Satire works well. That'd be better. I did a rant. I got sued. It cost me $40,000, and I won. Oh, sorry. And I won. Oh, good for you. I won, but it cost me $40,000. and legal fees and just bullshit. So, what are the things you write about for which you get paid?
Well, I've been writing catalogs for artists.
How do you charge for that? $1 a word or less?
Between 50 cents a word and $1 a word.
I hate to say this publicly in this venue here, but it seems to me that $1 a word was what people frequently charged 30 years ago.
Yeah, I'm probably low.
Are you artists paying attention? I think a catalog essay with your name on it makes a difference to somebody. It certainly made a difference to, somebody at the Hunk and Moo Anderson addition to the Stanford Art Museum.
I had an artist recently tell me, and she kind of put together her own catalog. She really spearheaded the project, but she had me write the essay. And she'd had a pretty quiet career for a while, but she told me she sold 5 paintings at very, very good prices. And she thought the power of the catalog was just to kind of have that thing that tells the story and professionalizes you as an artist. So she was telling people on Facebook it was really, really worth the effort to do a catalog.
How many words is the right number of words? What range?
I think very short for a catalog. I think you can do a great 500-word catalog. Just to introduce people, give the collector something to kind of grab onto, a mixture of a characterization of your work and a little bit of what you're about, put very, very well and nicely edited. Makes all the difference.
What do you do if you're working with an artist from New Jersey and you're in California and do you look at the work firsthand, or you can work from JPEGs? What do you do?
You know what? I've had that on a couple occasions, and we just trade files. I just look on the net.
Okay.
Every time I can, I try to see shows. I was in San Francisco this weekend, and I went and saw a show in person, and I'm going to write about it that way. Here's kind of a review, and saw it with my own eyes. But I try when I write, and I've just seen it at a distance, to make that clear by using the interview format or not being a critic. And that's one of the things I try to tell people. People label me, John, are you an art critic? And the answer is generally not. I mean, I'm generally a blogger, and I'm generally a writer. And every now and then, with the right situation, when I have passion about something, I will write criticism. But that's pretty rare for me.
I call myself a cheerleader.
That's great. Yeah. Good. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I know too many people in the art world to sit there. I mean, if I need to say something, go off negatively on some artist, I tend to just pick up the phone and call them. And,
well, I just say no. A lot of people here, I'll give you my email address. A lot of people ask me, John, would you write about me? And I say no. I don't like their work.
Well, good for you. Who's got questions, you guys? David and Colleen are first. Go for it.
Hi, John. Do you hear me?
David and Colleen.
This is David. Can you hear me, Paul?
Yep, totally.
Great. Thank you, John. I appreciate what you have to say. I'm actually an artist, primarily photography in the Bay Area. And I recently started blogging on my own site, writing about my work. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts about artists writing about their own work. Do people pay attention? Do you pay attention? And what do you find is interesting coming from an artist?
Well, I have 2 answers for you. And kind of the longer answer is that in the October-November issue of International Artist, I co-wrote an article which is called The Artist Writer, and it's with Dan Maidman of the HuffPost, and we addressed this. So I'll, email me and I'll send you a copy, or they're maybe still out at Barnes & Noble. But we talked about a lot of these things, and I saw it a little bit differently than Daniel. I think that when you get out on the net, there's a huge amount of, and you know what I'm talking about, self-promotion. People talking up their own art, people blowing their own horn. So I gave the advice, I said, write about other people. I think that a great way to do your blog is to artists you admire, because then you meet someone, and they appreciate that you took an interest in them, and they may take more of an interest in you. It's kind of a nice chemistry. So your blog doesn't just have to be about you and your artwork, nor does your writing. And I think, when it's appropriate, of course, write about yourself.
This is precisely the kinds of things we talk about in this course, about growing your community and investing in your own karma and being, came from somewhere else, but being a good ancestor, is investing in other people so that they want to do something back for you. Now, the one thing that John isn't saying about that I find a real perk is that you don't have to come up with a content all the time. To do what John does, he has to find a show that he feels like writing about. He has to get his butt in the car and drive up to the Bay Area and find a show to write about. And if, damn it, that show that I thought I was going to want to write about, I don't like anymore, well, shit, I guess I have to find something else or write about it anyway. But if you're calling up, you know, any given artist, and you're doing an interview with them, you know, you will get to an interesting place. And it's a question of editing it. It's a whole lot easier to do it on a regular basis.
And I'll tell you a story that this is a story from a long time ago, but it stayed with me. When I was up in the Bay Area, I went into a very small gallery, and they had a beautiful Sam Francis show. And I knew Sam Francis. Well, that's a big name. And I asked the woman at the counter, how'd you get this show? And she looked at me. She said, well, we called him. He was listed.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think, you know, with the email, there really isn't anybody that you can't contact. And the worst thing that can happen is they can say, no. I mean, would you like to interview Richard Serra for your blog? Drop him a line. What's stopping you?
Great, thank you.
Did I answer your question, or did I just go way off track with that, David?
No, that was actually very good, because it gave me some ideas. And primarily what I've been writing about is my process, because I assume that people who are interested in my art are interested in how I get there, not that it's just an image. And so, but this gives me something else to think about. So,
well, I think you can do an alternation, that people do want to know the thing you just mentioned about your process and about your image, but intersperse that with another, you know, there's infinite amount of content out there. Write about a local sculpture in a park that you hate, that you've always wanted to say you hated it. I've got one I need to write about that way. Interview an art dealer somewhere else, you know, just that you went to their gallery and you really admired what they showed. Interview somebody from a glassblower from a completely different field, and intersperse that with your own writing, and there's no reason not to. There's just a lot more then that will draw people. Every interview, every name is another Google search or another draw that brings people to you unexpectedly.
Great, and I can write about my heroes, so that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. People will connect you with your heroes. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Nice to meet you, yeah.
Where's Paul?
I muted myself, but I was talking anyway.
Okay.
I saw John typing, and he was typing to me. I was going to say Philip Hartigan took the course and writes for Hyperallergic and publishes reproductions of people's studio images and then writes a paragraph. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you could extrapolate from, and I think John's is a good idea. Hi, Jill. Go ahead.
Hi, John. Thank you. Interested. I have a hard time with writing, and how you know, it's hard for me to, like, the artist statement, just all those things like that. And I was wondering, the artist that you did the catalog for, was it for a show, or is that something that that would be good to have other than just for a show?
I've done both. I mean, when people contact me, a very, very simple thing that we often do is they'll write an artist statement, and I just help them edit it, you know, something very, very brief. And then we post an interview on their website where I ask the questions and they respond. Mm-hmm. Just a simple Q&A, and you can do it with a friend or do it with another artist who provides that chemistry of the back and forth. I think that can be very direct. On the other hand, let me go completely the other direction. Mm-hmm. I recently wrote for an artist named Nadine Robbins, who was on the East Coast. And for many years, she had a design firm and was a professional. She has a very businesslike approach. Mm-hmm. And she told me, she said, John, the big thing I learned from my years as a professional is pay the money and get those people to do it.
Right.
So there's something to be said. If you're not an articulate person, you're just going to make it a budget line. You're going to say, I have this much money. Jerry Saltz would like you to write this for me, you know, and ask and get a top writer to do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think so, because it's also hard. You're so self-critical when you're writing this. You know, I'll start with page of things, and then I'll get it down to just one sentence. And then I know for the grants and things like that, it's just not enough.
I understand what you're saying. I'm kind of surprised that I've ended up a writer. I didn't naturally feel I was going to be a writer, but now I kind of laugh about it because the stereotype is that an art critic is a failed artist. And I wasn't exactly a failed artist, but I wasn't a big talent. I certainly had friends that were much more talented than I was. And they all look at me now and they just say, John, what a turnaround you've made. What a thing you did by shifting gears, and you're a little bit better as a writer than you were as a painter. That's another thing I try and share with people is, for me, it was the shift. That
right, different interests. Well, I might contact you.
Absolutely. Love to hear from you.
I've seen other people, who've gone to writing who have just been really gifted. And sometimes it is really surprising. Hey, Patsy, I want you to go ahead and ask your question. Time out. I'm going to find you on the list. Go ahead, Patsy.
Hi, John. Thanks for coming to join us.
Hi, Patsy.
There are three of us who have been taking Paul's webinars, Becky, Dee, and I, and we're members of a FISM who are photographers. We've created a show called Fleeting Moments, which is showing in Chicago right now. But we can't seem to come up with a good name for ourselves. So, to have a website, to have a promo card, to have a, way to promote ourselves. Do you help us? I mean, do you do that kind of thing as well?
I would just do it on a kind of an informal, friendly basis. Use my email and I'll see if I can come up with any names for you. We'll come up with something.
What are you looking for? Something like the Harry Who, or the Images, or the all babe dancing photographers? Is that what you're looking for? Things like that?
Something that's catchy but is not ridiculous.
I don't know. It's got click in the title though.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Other people are welcome to submit ideas.
Oh, well, I would love it.
Contest closes at midnight. Becky, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm one of the fabulous 5 female photographers. Anyway, let's start my question. That's a good question you asked, Patsy. John, I have 2 questions for you. The first is whether you do book reviews, the description that goes in the book that talks about either the artist or the particular artwork. So in photography, a lot of times we're talking about publishing books, self-published, and it's always good to have somebody else writing the words besides yourself. So is that the kind of work you as a writer would also take on?
Well, what I should do for maybe everybody in the group, all writers are different. And I'll try to tell you kind of precisely what I think I'm good at, and then I'm going to get to your question. I try to pride myself in being a very direct writer who comes from a background in painting. So I write best when I write about painting. I don't know how I would do about photography, but I'm a good-hearted guy, right? I might try. But I write well about painting. And I do write on a paid basis for clients, and I try to be egoless. I try to write what you need for your situation and be very, very client-oriented. That said, I'm not maybe a good promoter. I'm not about hype. I'm not about promoting. I'm not about being clever. I'm just more about, I like to tell a story. So I don't know if that answers your question about would I be the right person to write a jacket cover. I'd probably be okay, but there's probably people that are better, that are more specialized and maybe better trained in promotion.
Okay, thank you. My second question is how you make decisions on which artists you want to either interview or write up on and on your blog. How do you pick those artists?
I hope this won't sound cute, but it absolutely is intuition. It's just like when someone walks in the room and you look up and you say, I want to chat with them. It's exactly at that level. And I write about artists that either their art intrigues me, so I want to learn about it. Sometimes I write about artists that I just like them personally, which maybe that's not the smartest or the most critical or the most balanced way to do it. But when someone makes a good impression and I want to get to know them and their art better, I'll write a blog. And what I don't do is I don't write blogs that say this person is the next big so-and-so, or I'm going to rank this artist along with other people. And, you know, I don't play that game of art history ranking. I try to introduce people in my writing. And I think that I want to have the kind of readers that they'll read it and, you know, well, John's instincts are good about this artist, or no, this one, not so much for me.
Okay, thank you.
I thought it was interesting to hear you say that you write about people sometimes just because you like them.
That's true.
Because that is one of the things I talk about in this course a lot, which we've already reiterated again, is about growing relationships. And if somebody likes you, they're more prone to do something nice for you because they like you. And or, you know, if somebody's looking at your art and they're looking at somebody else's art, but they know and like you and they don't know the other person, guess whose art they're going to choose? Yours.
And again, this is, you know, there's different personalities out there. I'm the only son in a family of girls, and I was always the mediator. All my sisters had to get along with me, even when they fought with each other. And I'm still that type of personality. There are people out there who are real critics. Jed Pearl is a real critic, and I deeply respect him, you know. But I can't kind of come on that strong and make a powerful judgment and stand there and you know, handle that. That's a different personality.
Me too. I couldn't do it either. I'm with you.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know whether to go for people who haven't asked or people who have been, whose hands have been up the longest. Tough call. Reza, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So I was curious about how you think about your position as a writer and your relationship to other writers, or, you know, people in the blogosphere, or artists, and how that's changed since you started writing.
Again, you know, I definitely have a competitive nature at some level. I mean, I'm very proud that people are reading what I have to say, and I know I've helped sell some paintings. I've been helpful to some artists, but the biggest reward really is social. Like I was saying earlier, I just have a lot of friends in the arts, and now I go to an opening, or I'm on Facebook, or, you know, wherever I am, there's an awful lot of people to talk to. And that to me is the big reward, is that feeling of community. And I think what my friends and family where I live was hearing for a long time is, oh, I'm just not meeting the people I want to talk to. And like I was saying to Paul earlier, now I've met you, you know, and it's great. I really, you know, and I'm the featured guy on a webinar. Who would have thought? Because it's kind of a Clark Kent Superman thing, because the reality is I'm a community college art teacher with 3 girls and 2 dogs and a mortgage. I mean, that's who I really am. But in blogging, suddenly there's a little different social thing where I'm in touch with all these people that really, really interest me.
Is that a cape?
No. Polo shirt, you know. Polo shirt and Walmart reader.
There's truth in that. That's really cool. You know, but with black hair, you know, this Clark Kent thing. And
sure, yeah. Good work.
All right, cool. Sarah, I'm saving you. I'm going to Meredy. Meredy, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. It's nice to hear that there's another, just to be reminded that there's a lot of artists that live in somewhat remote conditions with remote lives who continue to love and pursue things related to art that aren't necessarily out there. One of the things I'd like to know is, through your experience, do you think that when you're writing about art or could be an interview or anything, do you think that it's confusing if the work is very complex? Do you try to take just a section of what someone does, like their philosophy, or maybe just the way they handle their materials or something? I find it very difficult to take a lot of information and condense it down into something simple.
Well, I think that in some ways, that's one of my strengths. I'm somebody that I have a lot of interests, and my interests fan out, you know, very, very wide. And like I was telling Paul, when I'm jogging or when I'm out hiking or when it's quiet, the aha will come up. And I'll say, well, that was a complicated painting or a complicated whatever it was, but I'll have something to say about it. So that's a strength that I think I bring to writing. But I also want to say that I'm not, I don't like highly academic writing or criticism, and I don't like highly academic art. I don't care for postmodernism too much, because I feel like so much of it is all justified by the theory, and as art, you know, you like it or you don't. It's very direct, like that intuitive thing. So even though maybe I'm good at synthesizing, I'm not a deeply intellectual writer. There are much better intellectual writers who, you know, can really break something down as far as it can be broken down.
Okay. Do you have any, oh yes, may I ask one quick short one?
Yeah.
Do you have any comments about work that includes you know, like journal? It's a visual journal, or that includes words as a play of their painting. Are you attracted to that in any way?
Well, I'm going to give you a very, very broad answer. This is a quote from Peter Sells, who Paul will know because he was up in the Bay Area, and Peter's 95 now. But I just read a book about him written by his daughter. Peter said, art has many faces. And that's exactly how I see it. There's no genre or approach or type of art that I'm not interested in. And when someone tries to make me join a club, you know, be about this type of art, I don't join those clubs. So I'm interested in the type of art you describe, but I'm interested in all types of art.
Okay.
I'm eclectic, definitely eclectic.
All right, thanks.
Cool, Becky, thank you. Sam, I'm coming to you. Sam, you haven't figured out how to raise your hand or something? Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I've been like facing it all the time. Okay. So I'm an artist too, and I write a blog, and so maybe I can I'll connect with you via blogging, John. But I'm sort of wondering, you know, you approach artists in an intuitive way. There must be a thematic aesthetic there that you're attracted to in your writing, no? Or is it really, is your market really diverse?
Well, if you go through my blog, the most common genre will be representational painting, especially representational painting that's based in skill or comes out of what I would call the lineage of academic art. Now, I've also written about Ai Weiwei, you know, who I think is phenomenal.
Right.
But I'm interested in maybe shifting things. That's something you can do as a blogger. You can be a little bit subversive. So everybody is writing about, you know who the usual suspects are. Everybody writes about the usual suspects. I try to write about not the usual suspects, you know, so I guess I have a little bit of a feeling for the underdog, which isn't an aesthetic, but it's an approach. Does that help?
I guess so. I guess I'm new to the blogging thing, and I never even thought of, I could write about other artists. My visioning when I blog is really quite wide. You know, I'm bridging so many different worlds because that's sort of where my art is. And but I don't really know enough about blogging that am I really reaching anyone? I mean, I get people hitting on my site all the time, but I don't get any comments or anything. So I really feel like I'm totally in the dark. Yeah.
Well, you know, it all starts out, you get a WordPress blog and your aunt and your mother read it and you get 2 hits and that's it.
Yeah. I mean,
But as your blog builds up, you know, you'll hear from a few people. It does take time to build it up. I mean, that's for sure, but it's cumulative. Maybe that's why I keep bringing up jogging or exercise, because there's a metaphor. You start blogging and then, you know, once a week you blog, and over time it becomes something.
And throwing in another person's name and that person, you know, like interviewing somebody or writing about somebody else or commenting about something, someone else, you know, diversifies. It's instead of just you, it's you and then all those other ands start pollinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I might just go do that. I should write about my artist friends.
Yeah, we got that.
Talking about and seeing you in your studio, just something that comes to mind. I remember I was interviewing, I'm going to think of the artist's name, it was Jerome Witkin. It's a wonderful painter. And I had about 15 minutes set out to interview him. He went an hour and a half, you know, on my telephone. And I was trying to keep up with him. And toward the end of my call, I said, Jerome, you know, you're breaking my keyboard here. You really have a lot to say. And he said, well, John, being an artist in the studio, it's very lonely. Very quiet situation. He said, we're very, very anxious to talk. And I think for a lot of you in your studios, you may have a lot more to say than you realize.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my little town, and there's only I have a handful of artists here that I truly, connect with, and we're all so busy. But it's a big leap for me, and plus I have small kids, and so it's, I think, and maybe that's why I even went to writing, just so that I could keep my brain engaged with art and along with my own practice. So, but I never even thought of that idea of writing about my artist friends. I always thought I had to be joined with a art magazine or, but I could just do it on my own blog.
You have permission.
And you also don't have to be serious. The best responses I've ever gotten to blogs have been to satires. If you make people laugh, you make a friend.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
You're
Sam.
welcome.
Yeah.
Meredy, your turn, and then we'll go to Sarah, and then we will conclude. Meredy, you're not muted. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know why my hand is still up because.
Okay, fine, we'll put you down. Put you back to your room. No worries. Thank you. Sarah, saved you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, John. Thanks for joining us tonight. I have a couple questions. One, I want to know if you're interested in or if you do ever do studio visits, and if you do, what are you looking for?
I don't do studio visits just because I'm so isolated, and I'm mainly, my biggest responsibility. I'm a full-time community college teacher and a dad, and I have a lot of responsibility. So I, with friends, I sometimes end up in the studios, but I normally don't do that. And I'm finding out it's one of the standard things that's expected of writers, and I keep disappointing people. I feel like it's like when I was in France and people would say, "Do you smoke?" And I say, "No," and then nothing ever happens.
You could do studio visits. I mean, like if you go to the Bay Area, you'd probably go do a studio visit in the same amount of time you'd do maybe a little longer than a gallery visit. And
I should probably do some, Paul. Yeah, no, I should.
You can start.
I hear you.
I mean, like Sarah's in the Bay Area, so I mean, I'm just thinking, and I don't know. I get a lot out of doing studio visits. You know how you have these aha moments and all these I get a lot of triggered information, a lot of stimuli from doing studio visits.
I'm going to take that to heart. Yeah.
Everybody who takes the course gets a one-on-one strategy session. I also coach TED Fellows for gratis, and if you wanted to do that, I might be able to set you up with it. It's a blast.
Cool.
But, I don't get any money for doing that. I don't get any additional money for giving these guys an additional hour of my time for one-on-one sessions. But I get an awful lot back from that. I mean, I'm giving them ideas, but a lot of it, sometimes I get ideas from them, and sometimes the ideas that I'm giving them, oh my God, that could work for me. I got a lot about that human interaction, the social thing that goes into greater depth than you can do at a party and it's different than sitting over lunch, because it's really not about what kind of chocolate milk you liked in high school. It's about the art, and it's about being surrounded in that environment. I find it really stimulating.
I'll take that to heart, Paul. Thank you.
It's fun. You could try it once. It's it only hurts the first few times. Sarah, did you have another question you wanted to ask?
No. That's it. Thank you.
Well, all right.
Thank you, Sarah.
Look at that. It's exactly high noon or whatever time it is. It's straight up. John, this has been really, really fascinating. Oh, let me ask another question. The answer is probably no. Did you know Michael Darling when you were at Stanford?
I don't think I did. No.
Okay. And then you didn't, and then he was later head of the Seattle Museum. He's in Chicago here at the Museum of Contemporary Art.
Okay.
Head curator. And it has some interesting perspectives. All right, everybody, have a fabulous week. John, you've been great. Let me unmute everybody so that they can echo that. I appreciate it. You guys are all unmuted.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I'll see you all in a week.
Thank you, everybody.